Hello and welcome everyone to CloudBytes, hosted by Dean Dorton. Presenting today is Philip Massey, our Software Services Director. We will be covering the 2022 Release 3 highlights in this webinar. If you have any questions, please use the chat feature at the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. We will be monitoring it throughout the presentation and we'll make sure to share any technical questions with our presenters at the end. If we do not address your question during today's presentation, contact information is included at the end of the materials, so please reach out after as needed. This webinar is being recorded and will be emailed to you by the end of this week. Thank you so much for joining us today. Do not hesitate to ask questions, and without further ado, I give you Philip Massey. Philip, are you with us? Just one moment, please, while Philip joins us momentarily. Philip? Philip, are you with us?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, there's Philip. Our fearless CloudBytes leader. There we go.
All right. Sorry about that. Not quite sure what was going on, but figured out a way around it. Okay. So let's get down to business. As Julia so let you guys know, this is the August 2022 Release 3 Highlights CloudBytes webinar. I'm happy to be here in front of you today. There's a number of good things in this release, and so we're going to jump through them. There are core enhancements in Release 3, and then as always, there are additional module enhancements in Release 3. We'll talk about some of those, but we won't really go into detail too much with those because it doesn't look like there's too many folks on the call maybe that have the construction module and contracts module and things of that nature. So I won't make you sit through those things. If you have questions and you do use those modules, then please do reach out to us. We'd be more than happy to kind of go over the new enhancements, no charge, of course. Just go over them with you and talk with you about whether or not they'd be beneficial for your organization. So with all that being said, let's jump in. I've made you wait a couple extra minutes as it is now, so let's go ahead and jump in. 2022 Release 3, there are some core functionality enhancements, like I said, and you'll see those in that left-hand column, and that's just a sample, of course, of them. You'll see some deep industry functionality in the middle column, and then you'll see some things in the far right-hand side that really just go to enhancing the overall nature of the Sage Intacct platform. So, for example, in Best of Class, they've really streamlined the electronic vendor payment piece, and that is in the vendor payments powered by CSI section for the most part. So with that, you are now able to go through less steps. You're able to set up vendors more quickly. You're even able to have sort of a vendor self-enrollment process. So they are really working on the electronic payment services part of this. And as you know, there's an early adopter program going on right now for the invoice management aspect of things, bill management aspect of things, so that within the Sage Intacct solution, there's going to be a very robust application that would rival the likes of a lot of the third parties that are out there. Your Bill.com, Tipalti, a lot of those solutions, and you may very well find that the functionality inside Sage Intacct is tremendous once that module is fully released. There's some additional functionality and flexibility in the dynamic allocations module. There's other subledger enhancements. We'll talk about a few of those, and I'll actually show you some of these things as well. For our Canadian friends, which we do have some Canadian clients now, so there are some enhancements to the Canadian input tax credits. In the deep cross industry, like I said, there's construction enhancements. The construction and real estate sector within the Sage Intacct family is really growing. And if you haven't heard and you are in that arena or need some of that type of functionality, it is really becoming a very strong part of the Sage Intacct solution. They've made some enhancements to contracts, specifically the termed contracts that will auto-renew and creating a concept that's called the evergreen contract. It's a very interesting third item on the list there, Sage Intacct and Mateo, very specific Roman Catholic diocese organizations, of which there are a good number of those that is targeted specifically to those folks. And then there's some things that, pre-built dashboards, role-based dashboards, a new Saas Intelligence module for software and SaaS-based organizations, probably going to start taking the place of the previous SaaS dashboard module that was within the Intacct solution. So it's got some really nice features to it. And then some more automation in bank rec, right? And in the contract billing as well. So a lot of really good improvements. Let's take a look at some of them here. So streamlined electronic vendor payments. You will have an ability within the Sage Intacct solution to really go in and streamline the vendor payment process. And some of this is tied in with the vendor payment services. So you won't be able to necessarily take advantage of all of this without that additional module turned on within your organization. So if you have any questions about it, please do let us know. But I really see this as being a focal point of what Sage Intacct is doing over the coming releases and turning their vendor payment solution into a very robust module. Imagine, if you would, vendor self-enrollment. Create a vendor, send an email out automatically to the vendor to allow them to enroll, to input their information, to set up their own payment methodologies, input their own banking information for ACH. your AP department will be in love with you for bringing something like that on board, because that cuts down on a lot of the time that they spend within the vendor maintenance area. And then on the right, exception management, I think this is really nice to add these things. You would think, maybe should have been there from the beginning, but it is nice to listen to the feedback and get them in there nonetheless. So the ability to resend information directly from the system, the ability to control any virtual cards that you might have within the vendor payment services, and then much more detailed payment error troubleshooting. So no cryptic messages, no having to try to decipher what it is with the issue that you're having, but plain English information right in front of you for being able to troubleshoot any payment problems that you're having. Okay. Dynamic allocations flexibility. Dynamic allocations, if you haven't heard of the module, it is a very powerful module, potentially, within the Sage Intacct solution. And essentially what it lets you do is it lets you automate periodic allocations of revenue and expenses. So in other words, we had $100,000 of G&A administrative expenses for the past month, and we are going to allocate that out across the 5 different departments that we have based on the revenue generated by those departments. So allocations is a very strong module within the Sage Intacct solution. It's not really a newer module. It's been around for a few years, but it is one that can a lot of times be overlooked as far as functionality is concerned and so forth. So if you need any functionality like that, now's the time to take a look at it. It's a very strong module. It now supports per dimension value allocation for employees and projects. This comes in handy when you want to focus the allocation basis per employee or per project. For example, you want to allocate rent across each employee or allocate some level of software costs against each project. You have to maintain a software solution to implement your product or to service your product or something of that nature. The dynamic allocations would now be able to allocate those software costs across all of the different projects based on whatever criteria you establish. It's also been enhanced so that users who have restricted access to only a subset of entities can now utilize dynamic allocations. They can create and generate allocations just for those entities that they have, as those restrictions are preserved in the dynamic allocations module. So previously, if you only had access to a subset of entities in Sage Intacct, you could not leverage dynamic allocations. They have fixed that now, and you do have the ability to use allocations. So good module. If you have a need for it and you don't have it, let us know. Be happy to talk to you about it. There's typically always, you know, some kind of way to get a little bit of a deal or incentive or something like that. So one of my favorite things, the next 2 slides are actually 2 of my favorite things. They're both in accounts payable. You can now view your bill attachments in split view mode. So if you have an AP bill and that bill has an attachment on it, you can now view it in a split screen, as opposed to having 2 different windows or pulling it across 2 different monitors or whatever your choice was. You can, if you like now, you can view that in split screen mode. Okay. There is a checkbox. I'll show you where that checkbox is when we get into the software, but I do believe that to be a very nice feature. One here that I also like a lot is they have expanded user permissions for the AP payment approval. So in other words, you can go in now as an employee, a warehouse, a project manager, and a platform user, and you can approve accounts payable payments in the system. So if you've got some people that you were just itching to have in the system to be able to make those AP approvals, then you can do that now. And I'm realizing for some reason the graphic at the bottom or the item at the bottom doesn't list employee and PM users. It's not a complete list, but you can, as an employee, warehouse, project manager, and platform user, now approve AP payments. Okay. All right, so some more subledger enhancements. For those of you that do advances in accounts payable, it has been greatly enhanced. It was one of the last straggling windows within the Intacct solution to come off of the very old interface. But the advances screen now has been much enhanced and has additional multi-currency support in it as well. So you can track, for example, as it says there, with an advance, is it in a draft form? Is it partially applied? Is it fully applied? You can see the posting details, audit history, payment application, how it affected the general ledger, et cetera. Lot of really nice new information in regards to advances in accounts payable. And then over in accounts receivable, receivables payments usability has been greatly increased, mainly from a standpoint of when you go in now and you put in the customer and then you click show invoices, if there is only one outstanding invoice, it will default into the screen as opposed to opening in another window where you have to select it and say okay, and then it returns you to the previous screen. So again, listening to customer feedback, redesigned the window in 2022 release 2 or 2022 release 1, I believe. Redesigned the window recently, got a lot of customer feedback on how that window was working and functioning, and did make changes to how it functions ultimately based on that customer feedback. So again, go to your community. A fair amount of what you're seeing in this release came from feedback in the community. So if you haven't been into the community, please do reach out to us, Kim Denton or myself or your consultant that you're working with, anyone, and we'd be more than happy to spend some time and help you get into the community. There also is a new information section as well with some additional fields, and I'll show you that when we get into the system, but there are some new fields to track additional information on payment receipts in the new screens. Canadian input tax credits. So I will be the first to admit that I am not a Canadian expert, but there is a big push within Sage to internationalize the Intacct software solution. Of course, never to the detriment of any of the customers that we currently have, but things like this with enhancing the functionality of the multi-tax in Canada, specifically in this case, is high on the top of the list for the Sage Intacct folks. So they've made some good strides in how those taxes are handled with Canadian entities. Some updates to the construction module. Again, we don't have a whole lot of folks on the call with the construction module, but construction or project contracts are a big area of focus for the Sage family as they begin to add more and more functionality into Intacct for construction. And now you can easily create and update project contract information. You can view key project information at a glance. So they've added additional fields to that window and kind of reorganized that window to make it easier to see. And then they do now expose more consistency with the document workflow and tracking within the construction module itself. Okay. Kind of consolidating that information and putting it in one common area where it's easier to grab. Subscription contracts, we do have quite a few folks on subscription contracts or the contract billing module. One of the big focuses of this release for that area is the concept of an evergreen template or an evergreen contract, sorry. So an evergreen contract essentially is a contract that automatically renews if not canceled. So think of something like Netflix or Sage Intacct. Could be any number of things, but it is a concept that's been added in now, and they are expanding on that functionality and giving more capabilities to have these annual contracts, for example, that you have to give them 90 days notice before they end if you don't want to renew or something like that. And so the system really just kind of says, well, if you don't stop me, I'm going to automatically renew this contract type of thing. Okay. So one of the other aspects of this, and this is probably something where we don't have also a lot of folks on the call, or truthfully a lot of folks that are actually tracking tremendous amounts of time inside the Sage Intacct solution or the Sage Intelligent Time solution. But what it does speak to is their continual improvements to the exposure of data within the Sage Intacct solution to all of the different report writing tools. So what this, in fact, is doing is it's exposing additional information from a time record keeping standpoint into the interactive customer interactive visual explorer. So they continue to add data elements to that. They continue to add functionality to those modules. And that's really good to see that they're not sitting back on what is essentially two already very good modules. They are adding functionality to those modules. So role-based dashboards, out of the box, pre-built dashboards with information used most often for roles such as those you see on the screen. So you should see those. They may be, you may not have permissions to them. You may have to go in and make some adjustments to be able to get to these dashboards. Certainly helps organizations that might be new to Sage Intacct to kind of get up and running and have pre-built dashboards for those folks within their instance of Intacct, but it also is something that existing customers can take advantage of as well too. So those are nice. The Saas Intelligence module, for those of you who are on the, for those of you who are on the contract billing module, the Saas Intelligence is a great application to be able to see where your subscription-based business is. It's got a lot of tremendous information in it. It's got multiple different kinds of dashboards that you can choose from, different kinds of information that you can have on the report. But again, it is a sort of a pre-built methodology for the most part. There's some tweaking that you can and probably should do to it, but it's a fantastic out-of-the-box solution for any subscription business to be able to pull up things, you know, such as your customer lifetime value, all of those different kinds of things, CMRR that you might be looking for. Okay. So we've got some more automation in the bank reconciliation. So if you guys haven't tried the bank feeds part of Sage Intacct yet, I've kind of got to ask where you've been, because this has been out for a little while now. But with 2022 Release 3, we now have bank transaction rules within that engine that can automate the creation of credit card transactions. So you can define the rules to identify credit card feed transactions and auto-create matching transactions in Sage Intacct. Create those reusable templates, define the details of the transaction, and they can be used then to streamline the reconciliation process and your ability to get transactions into the system. So improvements, enhancements being made to that, which is wonderful. And then kind of the last slide, more automation around subscription billing. So in the subscription contracts area, you can create schedules so that the Sage Intacct solution will automatically bill the contracts when the time is right. So you don't even have to go in and run the processes anymore to invoice those contracts. They now have functionality inside of the Sage Intacct solution that will actually generate those contracts for you. Okay. All right, so those are the slides that I have. I do want to jump into Intacct and show you a couple of things, but I will pause at this moment. Actually, before I do that, here's my contact information. So if you need anything at all, here's my contact information for those of you that may not have it. But at this point, I will ask if there are any questions while I get transitioned over into Intacct.
Philip, we did receive a question in the chat, and it's, would the vendor self-registration also include collecting tax information like W-9s and so on and so forth?
That is a really good question, and I am going to be really honest and say that I myself have not seen it. I can check with the team and find out if anyone knows. Again, new feature, new enhancement to the way that vendor payment services is working, so I'm not sure if we, might take a little bit to get an answer, but we will find out. Okay. All right, so let me bring Sage Intacct over here, and I'm going to jump back just to a home screen. Now, and I'm sorry, Julia, was that the only question? Okay.
Yes, that was.
Okay, all right, I just wanted to make sure. I didn't want to cut you off. Okay, so with the Sage Intacct solution, always remember that you have an ability in the home screen to get to all of the release information. So don't forget that this is here. You can come here and you can read the 2022 R3 release notes. You can watch the videos. You can go through, here's a 12-minute demo on vendor payments powered by CSI enhancements. So it could be your answer inside of here as to whether it accepts W-9s and all that stuff. And all of the different aspects of the solution are included in here. There are quite a number of demo videos. We actually lamented a bit internally whether we needed to continue to do these or not, but we decided that at least for now we will. But Sage does put a lot of detail out here about all of their different enhancements. Okay, so don't forget that that is there, and it is really good to use. And I can't get this little bar to get out of my way, so I'm just going to pull that down, and there it went. All right, so let's take a look. As I said, some of my favorite items within this release are in the AP module. So in order to, for example, get to the split view, when you're looking at documents, you do need to go into your preferences and scroll down in here to a section called Personalized Split View. And this is in the subsection that is, well, it's a big subsection. So just scroll down and then make sure that both of these are checked. That will then allow you to have the split screen mode when you're in accounts payable bills and looking at attachments. I did not mention before, I should have, but this is the first area where they will put these split views. So you will see incoming releases, you'll see this in the general ledger, you'll see it in AR, you'll see it all over the Sage Intacct solution eventually, an option to use these split views. If you're more comfortable though with showing the attachment in a separate screen and maybe or window, and then maybe pulling that over to a separate screen, absolutely no problem there. But I believe this split view is going to be kind of a way that they help facilitate the data entry part or the data matching part in the full payables automation solution that's coming out. So I think that's kind of where some of this is coming from. So really, just make sure both of these here are checked, and you'll be good to go. The one about the user permissions and approving the AP payments, that really is just controlled in the same spot of permissions as everything else. So you'll just see some more options within the security setup now to be able to grant those types of rights and add those kinds of users into the bill payment process. But it is in with the standard security areas that you've been using already. Okay.
Now, Philip, is that under the preference in the AP module?
For the split view, that's actually
the question wasn't specified. It just says
okay.
Is that under the preference in the AP module?
That is in the individual user's preference. So it is a user controllable item. You could see it and your neighbor could choose to not see it. So that is under user preferences.
Thank you.
Sure. So let's take a look at the advances screen. So one thing you'll notice is there's more information here in the advances view area. Again, the advances was one of those areas in the system that was really lagging behind the other components of Sage Intacct for whatever reason. So I am super thrilled to see that they have increased that functionality. If I go to add an advance, you can see the window looks a lot more like the rest of the Intacct solution. Tabbing abilities just like the remainder of the solution. If I want to put in a deposit on something from Security Supply Depot, I can come into here, I can add attachments, just like in other areas of the system. I've got the description, and then I can come down in here and I can perhaps add something in for, let's put it to, I don't know, buildings. We'll put it to buildings, and it's a $5,000 deposit that we're doing. And of course, we've got access to all of these other types of information that we would want to enter, and then we save it. And we are recording what we want to do from a standpoint of an AP advance. So really streamline that window. If I go back in here and look at one that I created previously, you can see the dimensional values down here at the bottom. You can see here the information about the applied amount and how much of it has actually been paid through the check and how much of the advance is still due. You will eventually see posting details, and then you can also see the history, excuse me, the history of this particular document, right? So as I continue the process and we were to come into here and print these, if I pick this and we'll do the blank maker checks, and I'm just going to let them both go real quick, and we'll print it, and ta-da, and confirm. Now, if we go back to the advances screen, we will see, we should see a change. Yes, so we've got batch information here, how it was printed and so forth, and the advance has been paid. And if I go into either of these, we do now see the advance has been paid. Nothing has been applied to any open invoices. And then we can see the posting details here for how it hit the general ledger itself. And we can then see the check was printed by Emma Penny and confirmed by Emma Penny. So it's really nice in that the advanced module is now functioning like most of the rest of the Intacct solution. And you've got an email payment notice button up here. They don't have an email address. Of course, I would pick that one. But you've got an ability to send that out from there as well, too. Okay. From a standpoint of receiving money instead of paying money, if I come in here to receive payments and I want to add a new one, and I pick a customer of Bedrock Industrial Systems, I can click here to do show invoices, and previously what would happen is, in this particular case even, with only one invoice, I would still have the sub window up, and I would have to make a selection in that window and save it in order to get it to show in the screen here. But as you can see, with only one outstanding invoice, it simply brings that outstanding invoice in, and if we've received, say, $50,000 from them, it will default in the $50,000 payment and show you the outstanding. And of course, you can always go back in and you can make changes to it if there's multiple line items or anything like that. None of that has changed. It really is a matter of streamlining the process when you only have one outstanding invoice. Okay. All right. So kind of a quick show today. Not a whole lot of slides. Still a lot of good things in this release. I'm not going to go through the Canadian information and the construction enhancements and stuff like that inside the actual demo system. But a lot of good changes to the core. And again, this is one of those releases where they have listened. And they have gone out to the community and they've seen the things that customers are asking for, and they have delivered things that customers or clients or end users are asking for. So great to see that. Great to see Sage paying attention to what the end users want still and really improving the software. All right. Julia, any more questions?
Philip, we just got one last question. Where does the split screen work again?
Right now, it only works in AP bills. So let me go look. Accounts payable and bills. And just in case that you all didn't know, so I'm looking here at the AP bills view, and any of these with a paperclip, just in case you didn't know, that indicates that there is an attachment. So if I go into this invoice and I click here, okay, well, apparently it's a picture of some receipts in a box. That's the attachment. Let me see if there's not one that might be a little bit more accurate. Let's take a look at this one. So we open up this one, and we want to view the attachments. Whoops. Oh, I turned that off, didn't I? I'm sorry. I should not have clicked. Hang on. I should not have clicked the button that I clicked to close it. All right. Let me try this. If I go back to accounts payable bills, and I go in and view, interesting. I'm not sure, to be honest with you, why that's not showing up. It has not behaved this way before. Let me try that other one again. I guess like they say, first rule of doing a demo is not to do a demo. Let's try, okay. So I'm not sure why it's not popping up on the other one, but hey, there's a backup copy for this particular invoice. Looks a little bit weak to me to be a backup copy for invoice, but you know, that's what they submitted. Just for giggles. There we go. Yeah, that also looks kind of weak to be back up for it, but that's what happens. AP Build Arena is the only place that it's showing up right now, but I do expect that it will be throughout the system at some point in the near future. Okay. That is all that I had. I do appreciate everyone coming. Thank you. We'll let you out a little bit early today. A little bit of a shorter presentation, but still a lot of great features added into the system. And as always, if you have questions about anything that you've seen, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. erpsupport@ddaftech.com is a great email address to use. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Philip. Have a great day, everyone.